Hello and welcome to this professional development training. My name is Stephanie. I am a veteran special education teacher and your resident IEP coach from Mrs. D's Corner and the Intentional IEP. And today we're going to be talking about IEP meeting ground rules, what they are, the top 10 that you should be using at your next IEP meeting. There's also a printable to come along with this. Don't worry, I've got you and it's free. And why each of these is really important to not only you, if you're running the IEP meeting or whoever is facilitating this meeting, but also to the overall collaboration and rapport that you're going to be building with each of the IEP team members at this IEP meeting. IEP meetings are so important. And as a special education teacher and a caseload manager, I know that you know this. You also know that they're very emotional and sometimes they're really overwhelming, not just for the parent or the student, but also for you as the special education teacher and other IEP team members sitting at the IEP table. Without a shared list or a shared set, let's say, not a list, a set of expectations for everyone, it can be really easy for the rest of the IEP team or some members of the IEP team to kind of drift off. There might be more misunderstandings than if we had not had ground meeting rules. And honestly, tensions might rise more frequently than if you had not been using these ground rules, right? So the ground rules are going to create this shared agreement between you and the rest of the IEP team members for how you're all going to work together. You're going to make it the focus of what matters most. And what is that? The student. That's right. So it's very key. Let's start before I even share what the ground rules should be or the ones that you should use at your next IEP meeting. Before we even talk about what those are, I want to recommend some tips for how you should be doing this. You don't just want to show up and be like, all right, I've got my ground rules, like we're ready to go. This is the free download, by the way. You can grab it in the link below here and it'll you can grab it and use it. You can print it on any color that you want. I have some pretty colors here. But anyway, you don't just want to show up and be like, oh, I have our ground rules. Okay, I'm gonna put it on the table and we're just gonna follow all of these and we're ready to go. But you also don't want to spend too much time going over them, right? Because time is limited at an IEP meeting and we're there for the student. We're not really there to go over the ground rules, but it is very important to your meeting in and of itself so everyone is on the same page that you go over what they are. So right after your introduction is when everyone's kind of getting settled and we're all going through things. You have your agenda set up. If you don't have an IEP meeting agenda, I'm going to link ours here below this video. You could say something though along the lines of, before we get started, I just want to take a couple of quick minutes to share the ground rules that we're going to follow for this meeting. They're going to help us stay focused. We're going to respect everyone's time. And we just want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and everyone feels heard at this meeting. You can read through them briefly. You can go over. So if you look at them, there's bolded of what each one is, and then there's kind of like an explanation. Just go through them very briefly. You want to keep your tone really friendly and collaborative. And then if your team is meeting often, so if it's like an amendment meeting a couple of months after, or you've been using these IEP meeting ground rules for a time over time, you can say, as always, we're going to follow our IEP meeting ground rules today, stay student-centered, remember respect, and we're going to stay on track today. So you want to frame the ground rules as a collaboration tool rather than rules that are going to control behavior. Okay. We're not really trying, I mean, we are kind of trying to control the IEP meeting. We need to control the meeting as the case manager and as one of the team leaders here. But you want to make sure that it's positive and it's a productive tone from the very start and that we're using this for collaboration, not for control. Okay. Now it's time to dive into our IEP meeting ground rules. So we're going to switch to some slides so that you can read them. I'm going to go over each one, share what the expectation is, why we have this expectation, why it's important for this IEP meeting. I'll see you in the slides. Let's get started with number one, silence your cell phones. Now this one kind of seems like a no-brainer, but basically just means please turn off your cell phones or silence them or put them on do not disturb. You can say if you need to step out to answer a call, go ahead and step out briefly so that we can maintain focus. Why is this ground rule important? Well, distractions really can break the focus of the whole IEP team and it causes information then to be missed. And this might be really vital key information that the IEP team member needs to hear or needs to be able to make those data-driven, student-centered decisions. So while they can step away to take a call, this also can stall progress and force repetition of things being said. So keeping phones on silent is really a respect of the team's time and for what we're there to do, and that's to serve the student and make sure that they have the most appropriate supports and services in their IEP. Number 2 is follow the agenda. Again, if you need an agenda, I have one linked to this training. You can just check out the links below this video. But basically, the agenda is going to keep you on track. It's going to ensure that we're covering all of the required areas that we need to during this meeting. If there are additional items that we need to discuss, we can note them and address them in an appropriate section at the end. I'm going to link below this training. We have what we call our IEP meeting parking lot, and it's basically a data sheet that you can use if you get off topic or if there's something else that somebody on the IEP team wants to discuss, but it's not related to the part of the agenda that we're currently on or the section of the IEP that we're currently talking about. You can write it on this paper so that you don't forget, and also then follow up with things that you need to follow up on. Why this ground rule is important: the IEP process in itself is really legally structured, right? There are a lot of things and certain sections and elements of an IEP that we absolutely have to cover during this IEP meeting, regardless of what type of IEP meeting it is. Your agenda is acting like your roadmap, right? It's ensuring that we're meeting compliance, that we're meeting all the requirements, we're addressing all of the student needs, we're talking about all of the things, and that is, again, just to make sure that we're all in compliance. Your agenda, though, is also going to keep the discussion from spiraling into those unrelated tangents. Back to that IEP meeting parking lot, give that a look, and that's a great place to have these unrelated conversations documented for that IEP meeting, so that way you can address them and you can follow up on them, but at the appropriate time. Number 3 is honor the time limits and stay on task. So basically, we're honoring everyone's time. We want to cover all the necessary points that we have written in our agenda. While we value and welcome everyone's thoughts and concerns and suggestions and comments, we want to make sure that our comments are kept concise and that we're focused on the current topic. Why is this so important? Well, IEP meetings can be very emotional. We talked about that at the beginning of this training, right? They're also very time consuming. Now, this is not to say that an IEP, I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a second. I'm going to stand, we're going to mic drop. This is not to say that this rule is in here because we only have 60 minutes and that's all the time we have for this meeting. An IEP meeting you can have a part B, right? Like you can have a second IEP meeting if you don't cover everything. There is no specific time limit to IEP meetings. And so you want to make sure that you're very open about that. If we don't cover everything, we have extra time today, or, at the end of our time that we have scheduled, we can talk with the team and figure out, do we have time today to continue the meeting, or do we need to schedule a second meeting to finish it? But honestly, this ground rule is really here because we want to stay on task. We don't want to be overly time consuming. We want to stick to the time limits that we have for this current meeting to discuss as much as possible as we can during this meeting. We also want to avoid meeting fatigue and show respect for all the other schedules of all the team members. And that includes the parents, right? We are trying to be respectful of everyone's time. A focused meeting is also going to reduce the risk of rushing through critical moments and critical conversations, critical sections of the IEP, critical data points at the end of the meeting where we're like, oh my gosh, we only have 10 minutes left. We need to get through 16 more sections or whatever it may be. We have 16 more things to cover on our agenda. We need to go, right? So again, if you need to schedule a second IEP meeting, please do that. But just remember that this specific ground rule is here to honor the time of the meeting that you have set for today. Not that this is the only time we can meet, but this is just to honor the time that we have set for this specific meeting. Number 4 is ask and welcome questions. Questions should always be encouraged, and I love asking a good clarifying question. And I will say that when I'm asking a question, I will say I have a clarifying question, because that comes across as I am asking this question so that I am on the same page, so that I make sure I'm understanding the information to how it needs to be understood. I want to be a team player. I want to know exactly the information that you have, but I need to make sure that I'm understanding it in the way that it's being presented, and that what the data is saying is how I'm understanding it, right? So if something is unclear to you, if you're a parent or a team member or a professional, like ask the questions. Chances are there's other members of the team that also have these questions. And by you asking this question, you're ensuring full understanding for all of the team members on the team, right? You're helping somebody else by asking your question. So definitely make sure to ask those clarifying questions. Well, why is this important? Again, clarity prevents these misunderstandings. Misunderstandings often lead to frustration. This is where we see errors in the IEP sometimes. And honestly, this is where we see a lot of mistrust and broken rapport with the families that we work with. Encourage questions because that really promotes transparency with and across the IEP team and ensures that all of the team members that are there and on the child's IEP team feel confident in the plan that you're developing together. Number 5 is share your views willingly. Every single perspective at the IEP table is valuable, including, if not most importantly, the parent's perspective. So share your insights, share your experiences, share your recommendations so that the team can consider all angles of the student's needs. Now, we just did a training, I think it was a couple weeks ago. I'll link it below this training, but it was about data collection. And there was a section in there that we talked about different types of data. And I think that's really important to mention here. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it below. It was a video on collecting data during lesson planning, but you can fast forward to the section where we're talking specifically about different types of data. This is going to give you that holistic, all-encompassing view of the student. And so this is why it's important to share your views willingly. This creates a stronger IEP. And truly, when all perspectives are shared and everyone feels heard, you're able to put all of the different pieces of the puzzle together to make sure that the IEP has all the services and supports that that student needs to be successful. If team members don't speak up, you're going to lose valuable information, valuable data, valuable insights that could truly impact the student's IEP. So definitely share your views willingly. If it's something that you have data to back up what you're saying, definitely bring that data along with you. Number 6 is communicate clearly and listen carefully. You want to speak so that all of the team members can understand what you're saying. You want to avoid our acronyms and jargon without an explanation. I'm going to link 2 blog posts that we have at the Intentional IEP. One is special ed acronyms. That has a free resource in it. It's an acronym brochure that you can download. And then there's also another blog post about special education jargon. So definitely check both of those out as well. But you also, during an IEP meeting, want to listen actively to others without interrupting. Why is this so important? Well, clear, jargon-free communication builds trust and understanding. Back to asking those clarifying questions. We have to know what you're talking about to be able to understand it. So if you are leading with, well, a student has a BIP, the FBA is 2 years old, they're getting OT, PT, speech, we have APE every other week. Like if you're throwing out like all of these different acronyms, we have RTI and then we went through the MTSS and you know, they have the IEP, but we might need to do a 504 for this. And you know, it just, don't speak like that. It's just educational jargon that varies district to district and state to state. There are some things that are, you know, pretty blanket across all of the different educators, but there's a lot of things that also, like, I will see in Facebook groups an acronym, and before I can even provide help, I have to ask a clarifying, like, what does that stand for? What does that mean? So definitely make sure that you are clear and jargon-free, acronym-free as often as possible. And if you do use it, that you're explaining it. The second part of this is listening carefully. Active listening ensures that everyone feels heard and valued, and it's going to prevent repeated misunderstandings or conflicts rooted in poor communication. The next one is be open to ideas and perspectives. Now, different viewpoints can lead to stronger IEPs. So you want to approach each contribution from different team members with curiosity, ask those clarifying questions, even if it differs from your own opinion on it. Be open to new ideas and perspectives. I will say this part right here is often why we hear from other team members, and I will never throw anyone under the bus except for myself, because I have heard special education teachers also say this, and I know you listening, you've heard this as well. I'm not doing that because the student doesn't need it. Or I don't think the student needs that accommodation, or they don't need that accommodation in my classroom, or I don't understand why the student has an IEP. I don't think that they need this accommodation, this modification. They can do this on their own. They don't need me to do it. Those trains of thought, that thinking, that mindset, one comes from not being open to new ideas, but also comes from poor communication. Okay? So this is where we kind of break that down and provide everything on the table at once. It's important because what works in one setting might not work in another setting. So when you're open to new ideas, you can have more creativity. You can problem solve easier and better. You have more flexibility with thinking. And it also keeps the conversation student-centered rather than really ego-driven. And that's the most important thing here. Number 8 is respect the views of others. Back to being open to ideas and perspectives, communicating clearly and sharing your views willingly, asking those clarifying questions. You want to make sure that when you know that disagreements are going to happen, it is just part of the game that we play with IEP meetings, and just, it's not a game, but the analogy, it's the part of the game that we have to play, right? Disagreements are going to arise. But what's important here is that we maintain a respectful tone and we focus on the student's needs rather than personal opinions. This is also where those open to new ideas, that perspective, that mindset of student doesn't need this, that's an opinion. Let's follow the data. What data do you have to back up what you're saying? Okay? Bring the data to the table. This is also important because respectful dialogue is going to model healthy teamwork for everyone involved. And back to us modeling these skills for our students, if we can model it for our students, the parents can model it for our students, it's more likely that the student is going to be successful in learning that skill. Number 9, work toward a consensus. We're not always, and you're not always going to agree on every single detail, but you are always going to collaborate and reach solutions that serve the best interests of your students and meet compliance and legal requirements for your state and for the IDEA. An IEP that everyone supports truly is more likely to be implemented by the whole team. So back to that mindset of student doesn't need this, I'm not doing that, or teachers not reading the IEP or following the IEP or doing any of the IEP. This often comes from a place of just not understanding how to implement it. And so when we follow these ground rules, and every discussion, every decision, every idea that you share in that IEP meeting is student-centered and it's focused on the student making progress, that's when you're going to see the IEP implemented more consistently with fidelity, right? We love that word as teachers, fidelity. Consensus here, work toward consensus, doesn't mean that everyone's going to get their way, okay? But it does mean that the team has worked together to find the best possible solution for that student. And I've said this quite a few times throughout today's training, but stay student-centered. I'm going to link a blog post below this training about what student-centered means and how to write student-centered IEPs. But basically, every decision comes down to answering this one question or being guided by this one question. What is best for this student's education, and what is best for their long-term growth? Because we know, per the IDEA verbatim, we know that IEPs are here for education, employment, and independent living, and that's long-term, not just this specific school year. So, yep, you're going to hear a bunch of different adult concerns. You might have limited resources. You're going to have personal disagreements. But when you keep the focus on what's best for the student, it's going to prevent these derailments, and you're also going to ensure that the decisions are aligning with the IEP's legal and educational purpose. What do you think? What do you think about those ground rules and utilizing those IEP meeting ground rules at your next IEP meeting? Do you think it sounds like something that you could handle, something that you could implement, something that would be well received by your IEP teams? If not, I do invite you to at least try it. Maybe start with two or three of these on this list. I'm going to show the pink one just so it shows up better. Download the ground rules, have them in your back pocket as in your teacher toolkit. Utilize one or two or three of them as you start, and then you can add more in. Again, it's all about collaboration and creating a safe space, a respectful space where we can collaborate together and stay student centered and respectful to one another. It is not about control. Okay. When everyone knows all of the expectations, this is when you can have those honest conversations. This is where you're able to work through those disagreements respectfully. We're hearing everyone's voice. We're listening carefully. We're using respectful tones. We might not agree on everything that we're talking about, but everyone feels heard and safe and respected. And we're making decisions that are truly in the best interest of the student that we're talking about, that we're having this IEP meeting for. It's also important to note that these ground rules are going to be us modeling how we want these very skills are for our students. We want our students to know these skills. We're modeling them for them. So we're listening, we're problem solving, we're working together. So not only are these important for just the sake of the IEP meeting and working together as a team, it's also us modeling how to do the very skills that we are teaching our students to do and that we are often writing into their IEPs. Again, listening, problem solving, working together, being respectful, those things. So, next IEP meeting that you have, next IEP meeting that you're running, or maybe you're not running it because it depends on the state that you work in, I want you to try using the ground rules. We're going to build trust together. You want to strengthen those relationships. We want to set that strong foundation for a plan that everyone on your IEP team and your IEP teams, plural, can really get behind. And that's how you turn a required meeting, because we have to have IEP meetings, right? It's how you turn that required IEP meeting into a student-centered collaboration and where you can have those honest, deep conversations that are getting to the root of the problems to provide those services and supports for students that they really need. Again, don't forget to grab your free download. It's linked below. You can print it again on any piece of paper that you'd like. It's a PDF. Just download it, click print. It is there to help you for your next IEP meeting. There's also some other links below this training. There's some resources. We also have another free resource at the Intentional IEP. It's our IEP meeting checklist. And so I'll link that too as well, because that is a free resource that you can use. But I've linked some other videos, some other blog posts, and some additional resources that you can check out to help you with your next IEP meeting. As always, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out, support at theintentionaliep.com. And here on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube or whatever social media avenue you're watching it, don't forget to subscribe and like and share this training with your teacher friends, your IEP team members, your administrators, if this was valuable to you and you want to share this information. Until next time, I'll see you in the next training.